If you're a foreign virtual asset services provider and you are looking at Argentina, this video is for you. Argentina is one of the most active crypto markets in Latin America. Users are sophisticated, adoption is high, and the government has moved from isolated warnings to a comprehensive VASP regulatory framework. But that also means something very important. If your company has a real connection with Argentina, you may need to register with the Argentine Securities Commission, the CMV, before offering services in the country. So the first question is not, do I have an Argentine company? The first question is my business connected with Argentina? Well, for foreign VASPs, the obligation to register may be triggered if you perform VASP services connected with Argentina. That connection can arise, for example, if you use a .ar domain, if you have commercial agreements or subsidiaries receiving funds from Argentine residents for RAM services, for example, if your business focus or advertising is clearly directed at Argentine residents, or also if your Argentine business volume exceeds 20% of your total business volume. There is also an important concept, reverse solicitation. If an Argentine client contacts your offshore entity on its own initiative, that may be treated differently. But you need to be careful. Reverse solicitation must be documented, consistent with your actual marketing strategy, and supported by your user onboarding flows and communications. The key message is this: you should not wait until your product is live in Argentina to ask whether you need a license. You should analyze the regulatory perimeter before launching, before advertising, before onboarding users, and before signing local ramp agreements. At Ofaral, we have a specialized blockchain and fintech team with strong experience in capital markets, banking and finance, corporate law, and regulatory matters. We advise local and international blockchain companies in their establishment and operation in Argentina, including VASP registrations, AML registration, corporate structuring, product review, regulatory strategy, and ongoing compliance. We have also been recognized by the Legal 500 in fintech and banking and finance. Well, the purpose of this video is simple: to give you a practical roadmap. When do I need to register? What does the registration process involve? What happens after registration? And what AML obligations apply once you become a registered VASP in Argentina. Once your company determines that registration is required, the next issue is how to enter the Argentine regulatory system. Under the current CMV framework, VASP services must be conducted through a local presence. This may be an Argentine corporation, it's una sociedad anónima, that is an SA, an Argentine limited liability company, an SRL, or a branch of a foreign company registered with the local corporate registry. This is a key structuring decision. For many international groups, the question is whether to operate through a local subsidiary or through an Argentine branch of the foreign company. And that decision has legal, tax, and accounting consequences. It should be analyzed carefully because the structure you choose will become the regulated vehicle before the CMB. The entity must also have an adequate corporate purpose. For Argentine companies, the bylaws must expressly state that the company acts as a VASP. Generic or ambiguous wording is not enough. For foreign companies operating through a branch, the parent company's corporate purpose may include VASP activities expressly or implicitly, provided that it is consistent with the laws of the home jurisdiction and with the activities to be carried out in Argentina. The CMB also requires a minimum net worth. The amount depends on the category of the VASP services. For exchange between virtual assets and fiat, exchange between virtual assets and custody or administration of virtual assets, the general minimum net worth is $150,000. For transfers of virtual assets, it is $75,000. And for participation in services related to offering or sale of virtual assets by an issuer, it is $35,000. And if the VASP applies for one or more category, it must meet the requirement for the most demanding category. The VASP must appoint also certain officers. It must have a compliance officer who must be a member of the board, and also a public relations manager responsible for handling questions and complaints from the clients and reporting them to the board. There are also infrastructure requirements. The VASP must inform to the CNB about the computer systems used for its activities, implement cybersecurity procedures, and if it provides custody service, submit a description of its system. An important note is that outsourcing is possible. A VASP may enter into agreements with local or foreign third parties to integrate operations or to delegate functions, but delegation is not a way to avoid responsibility. The registered VASP remains fully responsible for the services provider, must ensure access to the information required by regulators, and must report certain agreements to the CNB. Registration is not the end of the process. It is the beginning of a permanent compliance relationship with the CNB. When registered, a VASP must maintain updated information and comply with periodic reporting obligations. For example, VASP must keep updated records of the wallet addresses used to manage custody of clients' virtual assets in Argentina, clearly identifying their own wallets from third-party wallets. If custody is delegated to a third party, additional information must be reported. There are also monthly reporting duties. VASP must submit information on the number of clients, distinguishing between individuals and legal entities, monthly transaction volume in US dollars. They must also report the 10 most traded or custodied virtual assets and the quantities of each virtual asset. And on an annual basis, the VASP must also submit important reports. These include the annual systems audit report and a report issued by the regulatory compliance and internal control officer. Legal entities must also file annual financial statements together with the external auditor's report and the corporate approvals. Also, technology is a central part of the regulatory framework. The computer systems used by the VASP must be subject to an annual systems audit. The VASP must also have policies and manuals available to the CNB. These include procedure manuals for purchase, sale, and exchange orders, operational procedures for custody, information security policies, custody procedures, and claims management procedures. For foreign VASP, this is often the most underestimated part of the process. The challenge is not only to get registered, the challenge is to operate in a way that remains compliant after registration. And that is where experienced local counsel can add real value, aligning your global procedures with Argentine requirements, adapting manuals, reviewing outsourcing agreements, preparing regulatory filings, and helping your team respond quickly if the CNB asks questions. There is one more point that foreign VASP must understand very clearly. Once you become registered with the CNB as a VASP, you also become an AML-regulated entity in Argentina. That means you must register with the WIF, the Argentine Financial Information Unit. The WIF registration requires corporate information, tax identification, incorporation of documents, proof of business registration, identification of board members, beneficial owners, the full compliance officer and the alternate compliance officer, criminal record certificates, evidence of CNB registration, and minutes approving the appointments. The VASP must appoint a full compliance officer and an alternate compliance officer. They may be foreigners, but they will need to obtain a quit in Argentina. There is a tax ID. The full compliance officer must be a director or a member of the management body. All this should be planned early because it may affect the corporate structure and the timing of the registration. After the registration with the WIF, the VASP must implement a risk-based AML prevention system. And this includes an AML manual, a code of conduct, customer due diligence procedures, risk self-assessment, risk tolerance statements, training, suspicious transaction reporting, travel room compliance, client file retention, and periodic reporting. The message is simple. Entering Argentina as a VASP requires more than a license application. It requires a complete regulatory setup. At OFARE, we help foreign VASP design that roadmap from the beginning. We advise on whether registration is required, how to structure the local vehicle, how to prepare the CMV filing, how to draft policies and manuals, and how to complete the WIF registration. If your company is considering Argentina, do not wait until the regulator contacts you. Review the structure before launch. Document the business model before onboarding users. Build the compliance framework before the first regulatory filing. You can contact us using the details on screen, and we will be pleased to send you our materials on the Argentine VASP regime and discuss how we can help your company enter the Argentine market in a compliant and efficient way.